Hi, I'm Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. For this episode, we are definitely taking a little bit beyond our usual takes on Akron music, the Akron music scene, and bands from here and who have moved on from here, to have our guest Myron Vernis, who is from Akron indeed, but he's definitely a fascinating man and a fascinating story that he brings that is Akron-based, but definitely goes beyond. So, hi, Myron. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on board.
You bet.
So you're saying we're taking a curve in the road today?
A little bit.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Myron is one of the country's most noted car enthusiasts and collectors. And I'll let him talk about his passion for that. I love people who are obsessed. I'm going to dare say maybe you're slightly obsessed with this. That's what makes life worth living, I think. And part of this obsession has been the book that he's worked on. Boy, how long did it take you to write this?
It was about 6 years. It's taken
6 years. I can believe it. It's a beautiful 4-volume book. It's called A Quiet Greatness, Japan's Most Astonishing Automobiles. And it is a deep dive into the Japanese automobile industry and many very, very cool cars that he has researched and many times collected and written about in a very deep way. So, Myron, let's start with the book. When did you first have this idea to approach this particular subject?
You know, actually, it wasn't my idea. It was my co-author's idea.
Okay.
My good friend Mark Brinker from Houston, Texas.
Okay.
We were car friends for probably 15 years at that point. We had really esoteric European cars for the most part. And we both got intrigued with Japanese cars because that's where we saw the younger enthusiasts coming. Okay, being an old white guy, I heard a lot of my friends saying, oh, young people don't care about cars. Mm-hmm. Well, we realized young people care about cars. They didn't care about 57 Chevys. So we got into the Japanese car scene because that's where the excitement and the thrill continued. And Mark had written a couple books before, mostly medical journals, but he had done one car racing book. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, we really need to do a great book. No one's done a great book on Japanese cars. People don't understand the great cars that Japan made in the United States, because what we got were basically their basic transportation models.
Right.
They sent us cheap and reliable cars when the United States was incapable of making them. That's how they conquered the market.
I remember when the first little Honda came out, and it was, you could actually buy it at Warden's motorcycle shop, the Honda dealer. Remember?
Yeah. The Honda, it's a little 600cc air-cooled motor. Yeah, it was actually Rick Case, when he started selling them, he had them up on a shelf. They were that small. So we didn't focus on cars like that. We focused on cars that we didn't get. You know, kind of our tagline for the book was, the Japanese with their cars were like the French with their wine. They kept the best stuff for themselves. So we got onto it. It was going to be a coffee table book, about 300 pages. It was going to take us about a year. And then we started making lists of cars that we didn't know about, and mission creep set in.
Well, something I love about this story about this book is how it grew from 300 pages to 1,400 pages. And as someone who, and I believe this has come up in earlier episodes, but I was a librarian for 35 years. I just love the fact that it's such a beautiful volume.
Work of art.
I mean, it really is. It's 4 volumes, the way it's packaged. There's a tactile element to it. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's not like, it's something you want to hold and open those pages and smell the pages a little bit and the ink and stuff. I mean, I love that. And it's just the binding of it and everything. It's just really a beautiful achievement.
Yeah, thanks.
During COVID, wasn't there a little bit of a hassle getting it printed here and then you had to go elsewhere? Or?
Yeah, COVID did a couple things to us. One was we had a big trip to Japan scheduled October of 2020, which obviously never happened. Yeah, right. And then, yes, the printers were affected. One of our goals early on was to make sure that it was printed in the United States. Mm-hmm. And we found 2 printers who were capable of doing the 12 by 12 format, which we insisted on. And by the time we got ready to print, both those printers had gotten rid of the big machinery.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, so we ended up having to go to China, which really was kind of a blessing because we found a printer there that had done nothing but art books in the past. This was their first car book. Neither Mark or I, co-author, really are artistic people, so we wanted to make sure the book was beautiful. So we hired Richard Barron, Richard is kind of legendary in the automotive publication business. He was art director for Road and Track magazine for 30 years in their prime, and we hired him to put the book together for us from an artistic standpoint. And it really paid off because you said that the textural things and things like that, those are all really important things, and things that a lot of people appreciate but don't really know what goes into it, like the spot glazing and the lay flat bindings and things like that, which are all very important things to us.
Well, the book, A Quiet Greatness, it's kind of an art book in a way, but with incredibly detailed technical information and information about the style and design and stuff. So the combination of those two things it's just really well done. But I'm always interested in origin stories with our guest, Myron, and so I'm kind of curious. Let's go way back, like this obsession with cars.
Oh, yeah.
When did that begin for you?
Well, I got a great question. A story he told me a few months ago about.
Tell me, I may have forgotten.
Nick's going to answer this question for us.
The first car that you bought when you were a teenager, the Porsche, and
Which I still have.
Yeah, I saw that. And then raising the money for it from beginning to what you wound up doing to pay for the rest of it.
Yeah, which is really a commentary on how my folks, felt about cars. But going back to the origin, I was born in Akron, but my family's of Greek origin, and I was born here. My mom was a recent immigrant. She had no friends here, so when I was 3 months old, my folks packed up everything and moved back to Greece.
Okay.
And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And we didn't even have a car there. My dad hated cars. He thought cars were the worst of necessary evils. My mom never drove. But my mom said I used to sit on our balcony in the main drag in the village we were in and just kind of watch cars go by. And then if I disappeared when I was 3 years old, I was going down to the bakery downstairs to try to convince the guy who owned the bakery to take me for a ride in his Jeep. That was my thing. So, but yeah, no explanation as to, why that was there. We moved back to Akron right before kindergarten. In fact, I learned English in kindergarten at Finley School. Thankfully,
Me too, man. When I was in kindergarten, I couldn't understand what they were saying.
Yeah, thank God there was a Greek American kindergarten teacher there. My mom said I came home after the first day of class in tears, and she figured they were bullying me because I didn't speak English. I said, no. They put me in the slow learner class. None of the kids know how to speak to the teacher.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
From a kid's perspective.
Right.
Anyway, so that was it. I always had a passion for cars. My dad never really cared about cars. Again, he really hated cars, but he drove. My mom never had the desire to learn to drive. To the point where when I bought my first car, it was like a 12-year-old Porsche. It was like $1,500. I had $900 to my name. It was $1,500 because I had a fresh paint job and a rebuilt engine. So I had $900 to my name. I rode my bike back to my dad's place on North Hill. I said, I need to borrow $600. He wouldn't loan it to me, which from now at the time it kind of pissed me off. But now, in retrospect, it was the right decision.
Yeah. You can understand his decision.
So I rode my bike back to the guy, and we negotiated a payment plan.
Okay.
At the time, I was parking cars at Portage Country Club, so I was making good tips. Had it paid off in a month. But in the meantime, my dad never saw the car. He went into the hospital, was diagnosed with lung cancer, and died within a month. Oh, that's so he never saw the car. And my mother, when I brought it home, 19 years old, pretty proud of having a Porsche. My mom, who knew nothing about cars, lived on the island of Crete during the Nazi invasion and occupation. She kind of walked around the car. She said, Porsche, right? I said, yeah.
Uh-oh.
She said, he was Hitler's friend, wasn't he? I said, well, yeah, he was. Well, she says, this car's never coming back here. So we had to go out and buy a Pinto to drive her around because she wouldn't ride in the Porsche.
Yeah, my mom's village, Simi, was occupied during that time, too, so...
Yeah, it was tough times.
Well, the people that lived through that, they definitely rightfully or certainly understandably held their grudges about things like that.
It's
I get
not
it.
something we can fully understand because we didn't live through it,
Right.
fortunately.
Sure. Right.
You know, you went from buying that Porsche to becoming, you know, like a super collector of autos, of cars, and here and in Europe. And you've also sold cars to some pretty famous people, right? You've done some transactions over the years.
Yeah, over the years.
Yeah.
You know, I'm more people who people wouldn't know because of the car thing. But
You know, from Jay Leno to Seinfeld.
I know Jay. He's been to our place. Actually, we took him to Luigi's for lunch. That's a whole different story. I've been to his place. I've not sold him any cars. We've not traded anything. Seinfeld has bought some cars from me. Actually, he's bought a tractor from me too.
A tractor.
That's a strange image.
That's cool too. When you were kind enough to show me your some of your collection, there were a couple George Barris cars there. I mean, you that don't know, he famous for designing the Batmobile.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, movie cars, the Monstermobile, the Batmobile, Dragula, things like that.
Yeah,
he was. He and his brother Sam were two of the most noted car customizers in the early '50s out in California.
Okay.
Both Greek, by the way.
Yeah, of course. And he loved your didn't he like your wife's Greek cooking?
Oh yeah. He loved the Greek cooking. So, after he and his brother split up in the late '50s, he started doing cars for the movies, and he started doing custom cars for celebrities, right? Their own personal cars.
Okay.
Yeah, like Clark Gable, all the way up to like Farrah Fawcett and stuff.
Wow.
But so we became friendly. I used to be involved with a show in Canton called the Glenmore Gathering.
Oh yeah.
And
a hell of a
George,
show.
yeah, it was great. Yeah, George would regularly come as a guest, and we got to be friendly. And unfortunately, he passed away about 6 years ago. And I always wanted one of his cars, and fortunately, I wasn't able to acquire one until after he passed away. But now I've got 3.
Wow.
The Corvette's beautiful.
So this is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with my co-host Nick Nicholas and our very special guest, Myron Vernis, car enthusiast and collector and a man of many interesting stories.
You know, we were talking about some Akron bands, different ones, because Myron's friends with a lot of us from that time period, and the name "Color Me Gone" came up, and right away it meant something different to him than a band with George Cavanis and Marty Jones. Tell us a little bit about what "Color Me Gone" really means.
Yeah. When Nick said "Color Me Gone," I automatically thought about the drag team that was very popular in the 60s, very successful
Car
in the 60s.
drag, not dress.
Oh yeah,
drag.
that's a whole different. We're not in Tennessee or Kentucky or whatever that is, so that's still okay here. But very famous. They raced Chrysler products, drag altered wheelbase Chrysler products. You know, Akron was they weren't an Akron drag team, but Akron was really very famous for drag racing.
Okay.
Arlen Vanke, the Tin Indians from the Pontiac dealership.
Really?
Yeah, Akron was a real hotbed for racing. And then, you go to land speed racing with the Arfons brothers, Walt and Art Arfons.
Yeah.
It was an unbelievable time. In the mid-'60s, Akron was kind of in its heyday.
You showed me this one engine that you found that was in your shop that had Akron roots that nobody, I've never heard that mentioned.
Yeah, there was. It's called a HAL engine. A guy named Harold Hosterman built engines for hot rods from the mid-'20s all the way to 1960, and nationally known. First started modifying Model T, Model A engines, doing overhead cam conversions, and then eventually started casting his own engines and supplying IndyCar engines. 53 North Valley Street, working out of a garage behind the garage.
Nobody knows that.
Yeah. And the house is gone. The house was torn down as a crack house a few years ago.
Well, tell us about Screaming Jay Hawkins.
I was kind of blessed to grow up, in the 60s and 70s around here, and kind of in the heyday of WMMS, when they were really the country's leading station.
For all kinds of reasons.
And they started playing a fair amount of Screaming Jay Hawkins, just because of the influence he had on some of the major artists at the time.
Right.
And the fact that he's a Clevelander, originally a Clevelander.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, raised in Cleveland.
Oh, wow.
Then went on, and he's classically trained opera singer also. His voice is unbelievable. So a bunch of my roommates and I really got into it. I figured, what the heck? This is before the internet and stuff. I sent a letter to Screaming Jay Hawkins. I got his address. He called me.
Wow.
Yeah, and we set up a little fan club, and we went to a couple of his shows. But we would talk to him on a pretty regular basis.
Well, that's
then
very
lost
cool.
touch. He moved to Europe, and then kind of lost touch. But it was fun times. Super talented guy. The coolest thing about Screaming Jay was at the time that he passed away, they knew of 55 kids that he had fathered.
Oh,
and
well, more than you, Bob.
then at the funeral, a few more showed up, right? So they started this Jay's Kids website, right? And I think they're up to like 75 or something.
Oh, man. There was a lot of screaming going on, apparently.
All right.
Down in the valley on the foggy hill rocks with a crazy little demon blowing his top, fire in his eyes and smoke from his head. You gotta be real cool to hear the word.
You know so much about music too. We're talking about one of the first car songs.
The first rock songs, really.
Yeah. It's called Rocket 88, which is generally accepted. Nobody can say when rock and roll really started, right?
Right.
But it's generally accepted. A lot of the experts will say that 1951 Rocket 88
Right.
was really the first rock song, and it was published. It's attributed to Jackie Brenston. Jackie Brenston was the sax player in Ike Turner's band, so really it was Ike Turner's band, and nobody really knows who wrote the song. Some say Jackie Brenston wrote it, some say Ike Turner wrote it.
Right.
Either way, it's a spectacular song. And the Rocket 88 was the V8 that was in the Oldsmobiles at the time. And a lot of the drag racers, and it was really the most high-performance V8 you could buy in an American-made car at the time. So kind of legendary.
Yeah, that, as you say, I know that, it's lost in the mist of history. It's hard to pin down a specific song, but one of the things about that particular tune, Rocket 88, is it has that rock and roll energy, right? It's really an R&B tune that moves into what we would later think of as rock and roll.
Yeah. Charted R&B. It's the first place it charted was in the R&B
sure,
charts.
That would make sense. Yeah. Now, various countries have come up in conversation here, Japan and, Greece, a number of other ones. Do you travel a lot in doing your collecting, or is that not part of what you need to do? How does that work?
Yeah, we do. Actually, we traveled domestically a fair amount. We just came back from a show in Florida called the Amelia Island Concours, which is one of the better shows in the country. In February, we were in Paris for an event called Retromobile.
Okay.
Which is just this massive, I can think of the word in Greek, but I can't think of it in English. Just basically, just this giant swap meet event where they sell new cars, old cars, parts, literature, toys, and wine and cheese, because it's France.
Feta and Garcia.
Yeah, no, not in France.
France.
Yeah. But, that's become more of a social event for us. We go, we travel we meet people from around the world that we always kind of get together with there. But all car friends. Right. So, we've always traveled to different events. Actually, a lot of our family vacations as our girls were growing up were based around car events.
Sure, yeah. Now, I'm going to make a wild hazard as a guess and say the answer is going to be yes, but has the internet changed how you approach this stuff? When you were first getting interested in collecting cars, that was pre-internet, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you were doing this all via the mail or through actually traveling, or well, you tell me.
The internet has really been bad for my economy. Because it's much easier to find cars, and spend money. A perfect example is I have a car that I bought in Japan a couple months ago. Just landed in New York this week or next week. I'm going to go pick it up. Kind of a wacky SUV with an Italian body on it, but a Japanese car. Okay. And I got a call from a Japanese broker about 2 months ago, said, hey, this thing came up. It's one of 250. I knew of the cars, but this is one of 250. It never come up for auction. Said it came up, it's on auction on this Japanese website. It comes up in 20 minutes. And within half an hour of me getting the phone call, I owned the car, which would never happen. But this is, that's kind of more accelerated than most. But generally within a day or two, you can buy a car. Where in the past, you're kind of, like you said, you're reliant on the Postal Service.
Sure, yeah. And auctions, you'd have to be there in person, I guess, or have somebody that was representing you.
Yeah, I've owned hundreds of cars. I can honestly say I've probably seen the ones I bought in person maybe a handful of times.
Really?
Yeah, most everything is sight unseen. Yeah. And I got to tell you, that the whole time, I've never been burned by a car person.
Okay.
The only time I've ever been burned by buying a sight unseen car was a little old lady in Cambridge, Ohio. Supposedly had one of the last Corvairs built, fresh engine, all this other stuff, great shape. Send her the money. Go down to pick it up. It was this rusty piece of crap. That engine locked up. And all of a sudden she quit answering my phone calls. It was so bad I just left it there.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, so beware of little old ladies.
Well, you're a very busy guy. You do a lot of volunteer work. I know it's been years you've been involved with the Good Samaritan program at the Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church in Akron, and you're pretty integral in the early days of that.
I've recently gotten much more involved with I retired from my job, so it's a really great ministry that our church has. We're building it up now. We started a hot meal program, actually starting this
Father
week.
Dean started.
Yeah, we have a new priest who's really, really vigilant about helping the community. So that, and I'm on the involved with the Cog Valley Scenic Railroad and the Western Reserve Historical Society, which the Crawford Museum in Cleveland is part of it. One of the great collections, one of the great museum collections in the country.
Yeah, wow, that's great work to be doing and being involved in. It's rewarding to you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So this is From Akron and Beyond. I am Bob Ethington with my co-host Nick Nicholas, and we are here with our special guest for this episode, Myron Vernis. Is there a sort of holy grail of a car that you would love to get your hands on that you've never been able to?
Great question.
Yeah, but there are a lot of them. It's like an endless list of holy grail things. And
I find with record collecting that it's always like that. It's always like, if I finally get this one album, I am complete. And then a week later, I'm like, oh man, there's this other thing I need to get. Or I didn't realize that this band had this earlier album that's supposed to be even better, so there's no ending to it.
Yeah, there is no ending. People say, do you have a favorite car in your collection? Or, is there a holy grail car? The interesting thing about the book is it was very expensive to publish and research and buy the photos and do all this other stuff and print and everything. But the most expensive part wasn't involved with any of that. It was that we discovered cars, Mark and I discovered cars, and all of a sudden we discovered the need to acquire them. So during this whole process, we can count at least 18 cars that the two of us bought just because between the two of us.
From the start of this process?
Just from the start of the process. I'm directly related. We probably would have never known or bought any of these cars if it wasn't for the book. So.
That doesn't surprise me, though, because that would be part and parcel of your love, dare I say, obsession with cars, doing this research, and then finding these things that you didn't know about or you maybe only had heard about, and then you're actually seeing them, and it's like, ooh, wait a minute.
I found
that looked nice in my garage.
And then it became a bit of a competition, too. Especially if there's, like right now, there's a car that we're both chasing. Right? And they made 3 of them. And we found 2 of them so far. They're all in Japan. We found 2. And it's a matter of who's going to get one first. Because, once one of us gets it, the other one doesn't need it.
Right.
It's already in the family.
Right.
When I was reading a little bit of your interview with Idea Stream in Kent, you were referring to these might be the last years of combustion engine, but you were telling me that you have some electric cars, but some of them are quite old, right?
The oldest electric car I own is a 1975.
Oh, okay.
And my other one's a 79. But, if you go back in history, electric cars, Cleveland was kind of the center of the electric car industry. back at the turn of the 20th century.
Wow.
Steam, gas, or electric were like your choices.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all marketed a little differently. But Cleveland, with companies like Baker and Roush and Lang, they were really the electric car hub. White electrics became white steam. Whites were the first presidential automobiles. The first cars in the White House were made in Cleveland.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Cleveland was kind of the hub. Actually, Cleveland was the Motor City till about 1910, 1911. There's great electric car history. Eventually, the electric cars were built serially up until about the mid-20s or so, marketed primarily to women.
Okay.
The big thing that really hurt electric cars was the invention of the electric starter, because women really had a hard time cranking engines.
Okay.
And then with the invention of the electric starter in the early 20s, with the general adoption of the electric starter for a gas engine in the 90s, then it became easier for women to drive the car.
Okay, interesting. Huh. I have a controversial opinion about cars and gas versus electric. I'd be curious to hear your opinion about it. For environmental reasons that are obvious, a move away from fossil fuels and all that kind of stuff would be better for the environment. And I'm 100% on board with that idea. But I question how realistic it is that we can change as a society from the gas engine to electric cars in a massive way. I mean, there's gas stations on every other corner. And I know just from the past, when the gas station closes, which is rare, frankly, but when they do close, it's usually an environmental mess. It's this whole thing of having to clean out these tanks that are rusty and stuff. I'm not trying to be a dire pessimist here, but I just wonder if you have a take on that, because I'm just, when I find people just saying like, by 2030, we'll have all electric cars. And I'm kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, I mean, the Biden administration's goal is to have 50% of the new cars sold in the United States be electric by 2030.
Okay, yeah.
We're in a transitional phase. We really don't know what's going to happen at this point. We don't know the real ecological impact of manufacturing batteries. Which is
another question.
We haven't really hit the most effective batteries that we can get. So we're kind of transitioning, like happened in the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century. We're getting away from horses, and we didn't know at the time whether it was going to be steam cars, electric cars, or gasoline cars. And we knew it was going to be cars.
Yeah.
Same thing. Right now, we think it's going to be electric cars. Who knows where we're going to end up 10, 20 years from now. But I'm all for it. Listen, progress is inevitable.
Sure.
Electric cars are awesome. I've owned electric cars for 30 years. Still don't have one as a daily driver, but only because my newest car is 30 years old. They didn't make very effective electric cars 30 years ago. But, to really adopt electric cars, we have to get away from this mindset that's been beat into us for the last 75 years by manufacturers that we need to trade a car every 2 years. To get the maximum benefit of any car, but primarily an electric car, you have to drive it till it drops, which means that we need to be driving our cars till they're 11, 12, 15 years old.
Right.
And,
well, I'm down for that.
Me, yeah.
Oh, no, I'm down for it, too.
I'm living that dream right now.
I'm more cutting edge than I realized.
Yeah, but, Brooke Stevens had this kind of programmed obsolescence idea, right? We've been training people to just get rid of stuff because it was newer and better after it was 2, 3, or still has like the majority of its life left in it.
Sure, right.
And for us to be effective in adapting any of those alternative energy things, we have to also adapt to the way that we look at things.
Right. I want to just point out for the record, I am pro-environment. I'm not a climate change skeptic. When I hear about this theoretical easy turnover to a whole new way of, motoring our way around, I'm wondering how that will really play out. But
it's all about infrastructure. The manufacturers can build plenty. Ford is cranking out those electric trucks, and they can't build them fast enough. But I mean, even here in Northeast Ohio, we're in a real desert for infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about where you would go. I mean, I drive all around the area, If I had an electric car on a daily basis, I wouldn't know where to charge it.
Right.
You know, you go to New
exactly.
York or California, there's stuff out there.
Yeah.
But everything in between is a real wasteland, and infrastructure is the biggest issue.
Right. So you're talking about your collecting partner for vehicles, for automobiles, and it.
My wife is my collecting partner.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay.
She'll make that very clear. To you.
Okay. I don't want to cause any trouble here. But it raises a question in my mind. I'm assuming your wife is not going to be one of these people. Is there a lot of competition in the collecting world? Can it get, I mean, you probably don't want to name any names, but can it get ugly at times? Do somebody do some guys undermine other collectors in order to get the car that they want, or way overbid, or any of the variety of ways that there could be some sort of hard feelings about this stuff? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think like in any passion,
sure,
there's a possibility for that. I've never really experienced it. I've had cars, air quotes, bought out from under me, and,
right?
And I'm sure I've done it to other people too.
Yeah.
Generally, it's not intentional. If you're dealing with one-offs, it's always an issue because you don't know who else is pursuing it.
Right.
But when you're looking at more esoteric things, one-off type things, no. Now, is there an opportunity to be taken advantage of and to take advantage of people? Obviously, yes. I mean, people see money, especially now in the collector car hobby, where the values have gone up significantly. Actually, kind of back to the music thing. Adam Levine is in a big lawsuit right now for this Maserati convertible that he bought that was misrepresented to him, and it turns out the serial numbers have been changed and things.
Oh, really? Wow.
But I mean, that's more of a matter of an uneducated consumer.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
A lot of famous people, not just music people. A lot of famous people buy cars because they think they're supposed to buy cars.
Right.
But if you're a real educated consumer, that's just not going to happen. And talk about rock and roll guys. The real.
That's what I was going to ask.
There aren't that many that are real hardcore enthusiasts. Obviously, top of the heap is probably Nick Mason.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a Pink Floyd guy, but he is one of the great collectors in the country.
Oh, and I heard that didn't Jeff Beck have a collection of American cars?
A lot of guys have cars,
Yeah.
but they're a lot of guys have cars.
But Nick Mason.
Yeah, Nick Mason. Who's the lead singer for AC/DC?
Brian Johnson.
Yeah, I was going with
Yeah.
I was going with the dead guy, and I knew that was who we were getting for.
No, Brian Johnson is a first-rate car guy, great collector, racer. In this country, John Oates is a very knowledgeable car guy.
Oh, wow.
Really? Super knowledgeable car guy. Has probably one of the nicest MGA twin cams in the country. Just driving an Emery Porsche Outlaw now. So, but those are kind of like the key guys. But then those are the guys that aren't going to get taken advantage of.
Right.
Right.
Well, of course, there's that old lady in Cambridge. You have to look out for her.
Lesson learned.
So this is From Akron and Beyond. My co-host Nick Nicholas and I am Bob Ethington. We're here with Myron Vernis talking about the world of car collecting and enthusiasm. Nick, did you have something on your list there?
I was just going to ask, when you had quite a career you retired from in the food business, right? The restaurant business, hospitality business.
Yeah, I managed country clubs, private clubs,
Yeah.
pretty much my whole career. Yeah, it was a good business, nice people, nice environment all the time. The downside is you're working holidays, weekends, evenings, but it was really good when I was there. I tell you, I'm glad I was out of the hospitality industry by the time COVID hit.
Oh my God,
good timing there.
The people issues is real challenge. But,
Right.
I think that was great too. That you were, one of your last ventures was at Glenmore, but you were able to have both passions. Your career and also the car shows there.
Yeah, it was a great setting, and we were blessed to do that event for 18 years. And have people come to us from around the world and bring some of the spectacular cars. Actually, in Paris, where we just were, at Retromobile, there was a car called a Bucciali, which is this massive 12-cylinder front-wheel drive thing that cost more than a mansion when it was new in the 30s. It was there on display. and it debuted at Glenmore. About 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Which is really pretty cool.
I have to admit, you touched upon this. I don't know how much you want to go into it, but it stuck in my head. You alluded to a visit to Luigi's with Jay Leno. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us anything about that?
It was.
I'm sure Jay wouldn't mind.
No, he's cool. We picked him up. He stayed in Cleveland. He had a show in Cleveland, so we picked him up. And so, what kind of food do you want? And he wanted Italian. If you're from Akron, what are you going to do? You're going to take him to Luigi's for lunch.
Yeah.
Of course, he wanted chicken and cappuccino, two things that are never been available at all at Luigi's. But he ended up having a really, really good meal. Mm-hmm. Endless number of people. We were there at the peak of lunch. So endless number of people come. Super gracious guy, right? Uh-huh. Nobody got rejected for a photograph or an autograph.
He's very recognizable, so I would imagine.
Yeah. And so it was a lunch of interruptions. But he, listen, he's been doing that for 50 years, 60 years. So I mean, that's kind of what he's used to, and he's great about it. He still does a lot of shows.
And he's really a nice guy.
Yeah. The only thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way was that they comped our meal.
Oh, really?
Right?
Uh-huh.
Jay was going to pay anyway, right? We brought him there. Give me a certificate to come back.
Hey, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but this is...
Jay can afford it.
Yeah, right.
This is probably the only opportunity I'll ever have to bring this up, Bob. Years ago, I saw you in an interview that you did years ago. I think it was for one of the Akron historical documentaries, where you used to go to Luigi's real late at night after the bars were closing. I was still open, and there would be these different. You could tell there were different types of bands there for the way they were dressed.
Right. Well, it was just we would play these shows, and then it would be by the time we'd unload, or we had loaded all of our equipment, all the drums
After
and amps and
2:30.
everything. It's after 2:30. It's like pushing 3:00, and it was just funny because you'd go there and we had this experience. It was actually a Tin Huey show. So Harvey was there, and Ralph Carney and Chris Butler, a bunch of the guys from the band. And we were there, and it's really late, and we're ordering pizzas and the salads with cheese, of course. And it was just funny because it was like when we get there, there's these guys that are all like, there's like a bunch of like police are there. And it's obviously like the end of their shift or whatever, and they're getting something to eat. And then these guys come in, and they're all wearing these sort of matching vests and stuff and ties. And it's kind of like, I'm like, well, so this is some sort of wedding band or polka band or something. You can just kind of tell. And then these guys come in after that, and they've all got like long feathered hair and, and piercings and everything. And I'm like, well, these are the metal dudes, and I'm just kind of like looking around, and I'm like, yep, we're the dummies that are here eating at 3:30 in the morning.
You made $10 a piece playing.
Yeah. We spent it all on our dinner. Where's Jay Leno when we need him?
Yeah, right.
I just had to mention that because I remember that from...
No, it was a very common phenomenon. Yeah, it could be there. It could be at a, all night, whatever, taco place or whatever. But.
When we had car collector friends come in from out of the country or from the West Coast or something like that Luigi's was always our go-to place. Because like midnight, they're hungry. Where are you going to go and at?
Right, exactly.
And the amazing thing is, listen, Luigi's is not an Epicurean delight, okay? But it is what it is.
Right.
And I've taken people there that are really high up in that world, really high-end people and stuff. Everybody loves Luigi's. And once I took a friend who was an executive. He was a big museum director, but he'd retired as an executive for Hilton Hotels.
Okay.
New food, just I took him there because there was no other place open. Next day, I get a call from his assistant. They were up in Cleveland looking at stuff. They said, can you, what was the name of the place you took us to yesterday? Oh, shoot, man, they got food poisoning or something. That's what I'm immediately thinking.
Right.
I said, well, it's Luigi's, listen to that. He said, can you tell us how to get there? We want to come back for dinner tonight.
Oh, my God.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely an Akron landmark, that's for sure. And people, yeah, it's a good experience there. Food's good, that's for sure. Hits the spot at 3:30 in the morning.
That's right.
I'll tell you that. Although I don't think they're open that late anymore.
No,
was that a pandemic thing, or was that just kind of business?
It was before pandemic.
Yeah, they're still open at like 2, I think, but I mean, it's still open quite late. But yeah, I think they were the only place open until 4 for many years, right?
Well, the landscape of downtown Akron has changed.
Yeah, true.
I used to manage the Akron City Club, the Cascade Club, and the Akron City Club downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to spend a lot of time downtown. It's, I drive through now. Our church is very close to downtown Akron.
Yes.
I drive through like in the middle of lunchtime during the week, and the streets are deserted.
Yeah.
Right, where I remember just the crowds of people going to lunch and stuff.
Remember? Yeah.
Well, I think. I mean, you talk about a society in transition with like we're talking about gas to electric cars, and I think the city of Akron is a city in transition. Hopefully, we're moving in a good direction. That the years of construction downtown didn't help. I mean, it was kind of crazy. I worked at the main library right downtown, and I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's still working there and mentioned because I still do a lot of stuff for the library. I'm on the board of the Friends of Maine Library and a variety of other things, and love that place. And I was saying like, well, maybe I've kind of been down at Maine Library more than usual lately. Maybe we could get lunch sometime. And he was like, well, there's the Chameleon Cafe, which is great and is right next door, but it's kind of about it. And there used to be like in that Orangey Mall, which was kind of part of where the city club was. There used to be tons of stuff. There's not a single restaurant there now of any kind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even the McDonald's closed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, that closed a long time ago. And that's as you saw when a McDonald's closes.
Right.
That's pretty rare. But anyway, on that pessimistic note, let's lighten things up just for a moment before we end this. It's been great having you here. Can you tell us what your next venture is, or have you thought that far down the line yet?
It's being retired. The good thing is you don't have to think about it too much.
Amen to that.
We'll do some shows. Actually, my wife and I were just talking about our travel schedules for the rest of the year. Tough to say. We have a granddaughter in Detroit now, so
great.
We're kind of tethered to the Midwest for a while. But, happily tethered.
Yeah.
So just events. There are a couple. My co-author has already finished a second book on a very obscure Austrian car called a Denzel.
Okay.
And I've been approached about a couple projects. We've been approached. There's one that I'm kind of looking at of a story about one of the cars I own, a car that 16 were made, a big 3-wheeled car. It's kind of an interesting story. It kind of parallels the Tucker story. You guys are familiar with the Tucker?
Yes.
So very similar thing that happened in the same era. There's some good stories out there. Just a matter of whether I want to go through the agony of doing this again. I'm not a natural writer.
Well, it's maybe not, but you've written a really put together a terrific book here.
Thanks.
A Quiet Greatness. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. I'm so impressed by it. And we want to thank you, Myron Vernis.
Been called much worse, trust me.
Thank you so much, man. It's great seeing you.
Myron Vernis. He's been our guest today with my co-host, Nick Nicholas. I'm Bob Ethington. This has been From Akron and Beyond.
Those team